Hello and welcome to Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. My name is Zach Heine and I am your host tonight. I'm back on the air after missing Thursday. I was feeling a little under the weather, so apologies for no show on Thursday or this past Thursday night, but I'm glad to be back here on Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football, because Iowa football is back after a bye week. We have a lot to talk about with the depth chart revealed today, beginning to preview Wisconsin, who Iowa will take on this weekend. And so, a lot to get into on tonight's show. But first, make sure you're following all of our social medias. You can follow me on X at Jack_Heine. You can follow my written work at Hawkeyes Wire. Make that your first stop in the morning for all of your Iowa athletics news, football, basketball. We're getting into some wrestling content as well, so make sure that you're checking that out every day to see what we have going on. And then, of course, the voice of college football at the VOCFB. Make sure you're following all of us on X to keep up with all of your Iowa athletics news. But we're here today to talk about the Iowa football team, who returns from their bye and will travel up to Madison to take on Wisconsin for the Heartland Trophy. And there's a lot to dive into with this game, but I think it makes the most sense to really start with Iowa's depth chart, because we got a lot of answers revealed on that depth chart about what to expect, who to expect more so on the field for Iowa this weekend. And I'll pull up the depth chart right now so that we can take a look together. It's kind of hard to read, and I apologize for that here on the screen. But this is Iowa's newest depth chart, and most of the recent depth charts have been, pretty basic. A change here, a change there. There's a lot going on this depth chart to break down. But I think the most important thing, and the one that I'm going to start with, is Mark Gronowski is present. He is listed as the starter for Iowa this weekend at Wisconsin. Now, I wouldn't get too excited just yet. Iowa's done this thing a lot this year, where they list a player on the Monday depth chart, and then Kirk Ferentz rules them out during his Tuesday press conference. It happened with Xavier Williams a few weeks ago with Jazz Patterson when he was hurt. So just because Mark Gronowski is on the Monday depth chart, I wouldn't assume automatically that he is going to, be on the field this Saturday at Wisconsin. But it's a good sign that he's here for his long-term availability, even if he can't go against Wisconsin. And we'll find out tomorrow. Kirk Ferentz will tell us at his press conference whether Mark Gronowski will go or not, most likely. But it's a good sign that he's on the depth chart for his long-term availability. So even if he misses the Wisconsin game, you feel pretty decent about him coming back for that Penn State game. And that's good, considering, a lot of people, myself included, were worried that this might be a longer-term, potentially season-ending injury when you saw him go down and, writhing in pain on the field against Indiana. And so it's good to see Mark Gronowski present on the depth chart, even if he's not able to go against Wisconsin this week. It bodes well for him long-term the rest of the season. And speaking of that quarterback position, there is an or distinction now. Hank Brown or Jeremy Hecklinski as the backup. So I would leave the door open potentially to the Wake Forest transfer Jeremy Hecklinski getting a chance to start this game if Mark Gronowski cannot go, or at the very least Hank Brown maybe having a shorter leash than I might have expected on the road. It was a tough spot for Hank Brown to be put in, against Indiana in the fourth quarter, tie game. You have the ball back. Hey, Hank Brown, go win the game. Tough ask for your quarterback who hasn't played against a real opponent this season to go in and do that. And so I'm not burying Hank Brown by any means, but it's interesting to see Iowa, list Hecklinski as that with an or tag for that backup quarterback spot. So we'll see what what Iowa has planned there. But the quarterback room seems to be up in the air. If you told me that any one of Gronowski, Brown, or Heklinski was getting the start on Saturday, I would probably believe you. It's really up in the air for Iowa. So we'll know more tomorrow when Kirk Ferentz speaks. We might not know until pregame warmups or even Iowa's first drive on Saturday who the quarterback is. Iowa might try and keep that pretty tight-lipped, but good news to see Mark Gronowski present on the depth chart, and it bodes well for his long-term health. I'm gonna quickly go to Aaron here in the chat watching. I'm listening along, watching Dodgers and Phillies on mute, looking forward to the analysis. Yes, MLB playoffs are in full swing right now. The division series on both sides. It's been a blast to watch so far, so I do not blame you at all for having that Dodgers-Phillies game on. But thank you for tuning in, Aaron, to Iowa Primetime Live, with the Dodgers and Phillies on in the background. I appreciate it. Back to the depth chart. We'll move down to the running back room, where Kamari Moulton is obviously your starter, but Xavier Williams is back on the depth chart after missing the games against Rutgers and Indiana. Xavier Williams is back on the depth chart. He's listed as the backup to Kamari Moulton. That's big news for Iowa in this running game, as I thought Xavier Williams was their best running back really through those first 2-3 games. He was running really well. And so it's good to see him back on the depth chart and to give Iowa some more, players and versatility at that running back room and in the rushing attack, so they can go to Moulton and then they can go to Williams, and you feel pretty confident about those two churning together yards in your rushing attack. But then, very, very interesting, Nathan McNeil is your third string running back. The true freshman usurps Terrell Washington Jr., who is not on the depth chart at all, as that third string running back. Nathan McNeil really impressing the coaching staff, the fan base, through these first couple games, and it looks like he's going to be a part of this rushing attack going forward the rest of the year, which I'm excited about. Really excited to see what he can do. Curious to see what happens with Terrell Washington. Good Lord, Terrell Washington Jr. If he's involved more in the passing game, or is he just not going to be on the field? We'll see what the coaching staff has planned for him. No Jazz Patterson. I assume he would be that third string running back over McNeil if he was healthy. He does not seem like he's going to be back from that injury quite yet. So Iowa, hopefully, against Penn State, they can have their full stable of running backs available. But Xavier Williams is back for Iowa on Saturday, which is big. We move to the wide receiver room, and there's no changes, which in this case is not good for Iowa, as Reese Vanderzee is not on the depth chart. So most likely he will not be playing against Wisconsin. And it's unfortunate for Vanderzee, as the initial prognostication was that he would miss about a month when he got hurt. And he got hurt in late August. And so, many thought that he would return, for this game. It made sense. It was a month after he got hurt when they played with Indiana, and then they had a bye week. So many people thought, a month and a half recovery at that point. I think a lot of people, penciled in Reese Vanderzee to play against Wisconsin, his first game back, and he's not on the depth chart. So not sure if the recovery ran into a snag this past week, or if the coaching staff just isn't quite ready to put him back in there, or if they want to save him for Penn State next week. I don't think Iowa really has the luxury of, quote unquote, saving players for a better team. Iowa could very well lose this game, even though Wisconsin, isn't very good. It's still a road game and a rivalry game. So I assume it's just because he's not ready health wise, and hopefully he's back for that Penn State game next weekend, because they're gonna really need him for that and to get this passing game truly unlocked. But no Reese Vanderzee for this game against Wisconsin, it seems. And I'm sure Kirk Ferentz will have more of an update tomorrow when he speaks to the media. And then the tight end room, Hayden Large. your new starting tight end, as he gets the nod over Zach Ortworth and DJ Vanami. Very interesting move to see Iowa, put Large as that starting tight end, the graduate senior. Has been he started the year as a third string, and then when Ostrenga got hurt, he moved up to the backup spot, and now he's a starter. And Iowa hasn't gotten enough from that tight end room all year long, and they just haven't gotten Ortworth going. They haven't gotten really anyone in the rhythm, and so they're going to try Hayden Large and see how that works. I would love to see more DJ Vanami. I think he's a guy with some high upside, but Iowa going with the veteran, the graduate senior Hayden Large as their starting tight end against Wisconsin, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. Very interesting move there from Iowa. As the offensive line remains the same. It's good to see Bo Stevens listed as that left guard starter and Jennings Dunker at right tackle. Both of those players were dealing with some smaller injuries that cost them some snaps against Indiana, but it's good to see them both back on the depth chart. Iowa has a fully healthy offensive line heading into Madison, which is big because they're going to need to run the ball, very well to win that game, especially if Mark Gronowski is not able to go. Moving on over to the defense, mostly unchanged, but one glaring difference smack dab in the middle of the page, in the middle of the defense, as Jaden Harrell is absent on the depth chart. And junior Jaden Montgomery is listed as your starting middle linebacker next to Carson Shire. Really interesting discussion here as T. Hink in the chat pondering, did Harrell get benched? I don't know if Harrell got benched. I know he was kind of banged up against Indiana. He limped off the field at one point. He returned to the game, but maybe there was something that popped up in the days following that game that is keeping him out. I don't think Harrell got benched. I thought he was pretty good against the run against Indiana. Obviously, the pass defense from the linebackers has not been great this year, but I don't think Iowa. I just don't think Iowa and Phil Parker and Kirk Ferentz is just not that kind of program to where they would bench someone like Jaden Harrell after a bye week. I just don't see that personally. Again, we'll hear more from Kirk Ferentz tomorrow, but I think it's just that injury from the Indiana game that is keeping Harrell out this week. But Iowa will get a chance to see what they have in Jaden Montgomery, who has not played a whole lot this year. He has three total tackles and a pass defense in limited action this year for that Iowa defense. And so big opportunity for Montgomery. If he plays well, maybe there's a discussion with, when Harrell returns, but I think it's just an injury thing right now for Jaden Harrell, unless we hear something different from Kirk Ferentz tomorrow. That's what I'm going to assume that it is, but it's a big change for that Iowa defense up there too. As much as you like to get on Jaden Harrell, like he's still a senior. He's been in the program a while, as Aaron mentions, 5 years. And, he's someone that's a veteran, knows the defense. It's going to be missed. He will be missed out there. We'll see what Jaden Montgomery is able to do in relief. This is not a great Wisconsin offense. So you kind of hope that this Iowa defense can replicate their performance from the Indiana game against this Wisconsin offense, but we'll have to see. But no Jaden Harrell in this game, and then the special teams remain the same. Although looking at the snaps, Bryant Worrell is the snapper, and then Ty Nissen is your holder. Going to keep an eye on that snaps and holds in the field goal kicking game for Iowa. That's been a problem all season long, and that needs to be figured out. And hopefully when that gets figured out, Drew Stevens will start making some of these kicks that we've grown so accustomed to him making during his Iowa career. So some big changes on the Iowa depth chart heading into Madison for this game with Wisconsin for the Heartland Trophy. And I think let's just get right into that game. We've gone over the depth chart, and we kind of know who Iowa's going to be having on the field, who's not going to be available for Iowa for the most part heading into this game. Well, let's talk about Wisconsin, because I think Wisconsin this year is a fascinating team to talk about because, wow, things have just really gone wrong for this team. They're 2-3 this year, but they're 0-2 in the Big Ten, and it has not been great for Wisconsin and for Luke Fickell, their head coach this year. Let's pull up their college football reference page, and you look at Wisconsin this year. Their offense has been terrible. They're averaging 18.6 points per game. That's 121st out of 136 FBS programs. Their defense has not been bad. And 19.8 points per game. That's 40th out of 136 teams. As Darren mentions in the comments, Wisconsin has a tough defense, and they do. Wisconsin's defense, as we've kind of grown to be used to as Iowa fans, that Wisconsin defense is good. It's not the best Wisconsin defense that we've seen in the last 15 years, but it's still a solid unit, and it's going to give Iowa some trouble, especially on the road with that home crowd to feed off of. Not going to be an easy matchup for that Iowa offense, but the Wisconsin offense has just been absolutely brutal. They're averaging 309.2 total yards of offense, 200 passing yards per game, 109 rushing yards per game. Wisconsin only averaging 3.1 yards per carry. When you think about Wisconsin, the Badgers, you think about Monty Ball, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, all these great running backs that, on their own, rush for 200 yards a game. And Wisconsin this year just cannot run the ball. 3.1 yards per carry, 109 yards a game. Just not getting nearly enough from their rushing game. And the quarterbacks have been in and out of the lineup all season long, as you can see here. Billy Edwards Jr., the starter, the transfer from Maryland that they brought in. There's a lot of excitement about what he could bring to the offense. He has been, in and out of the lineup all year long. He got injured in the season opener and then missed a couple games, came back for a few snaps, left that game injured, and now, they're not sure if he's going to play in this game. Luke Fickell did not give a substantial update on Edwards Jr. heading into this game. But, even when he was playing, it wasn't great. I mean, he only had 16 attempts, but he was 7 of 16 for 113 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. But, I mean, look at the other options. I mean, Danny O'Neal was a starter for a while. 5 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions in 5 games. Just not good enough for O'Neal. He did complete 70% of his passes, but Wisconsin made the switch to Hunter Simmons, the transfer quarterback, the senior. He, I don't even remember where he was at. I think he was at one of the, directional Illinois schools, and he came in and started that game against Michigan, and he was fine, but there's nothing special there with Hunter Simmons, in my opinion. And I mean, that passing game for Wisconsin is just slow to a halt, which is really funny to think about, because why did they hire Luke Fickell? Because they wanted to revitalize the passing game. They wanted to bring in the air raid style of offense and move on from what we saw in the Paul Chryst era, where they just would run and bludgeon opponents to death. And they brought in Luke Fickell to try and revitalize the passing game, and he's done exactly the opposite. He's just buried that passing game. It is truly awful what Wisconsin has gotten in the air from their quarterbacks this season. And I mean, yikes, just absolutely yikes. And I was going to see Hunter Simmons most likely. I know that Luke Fickell mentioned playing 2 quarterbacks, that they're going to rotate in Danny O'Neal, assuming that Billy Edwards Jr. is not good to go. And I mean, please do. If you're an Iowa fan, you should want Wisconsin to do that. I just don't see a whole lot from their passing game that really frightens me. When you look at the receivers, it's a couple guys. Vinny Anthony has been there a while. He has 21 grabs for 258 yards and a touchdown. Not bad. The tight end Lance Mason with 17 grabs for 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trek Kekahuna, I apologize if I got that name wrong. 12 catches for a buck 43, and then Jaden Ballard 7 grabs for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, if you can slow down Vinny Anthony and Lance Mason, the tight end, I think you're in a really good spot if you're Iowa's defense. And I would try and get TJ Hall maxed up against Anthony most of the day, and then take your chances with Deshaun Lee on one of the other wide receivers for Wisconsin, because Anthony's the one guy that you just can't let beat you. He's really the only receiver that's consistently done anything for Wisconsin this year, and so just don't let Vinny Anthony beat you. I put TJ Hall on him, and you feel pretty good about that. But yeah, Wisconsin has not gotten a lot from their passing game this year, and you feel good about Iowa's defense and their ability to handle that. As I mentioned, the rushing game has not been great, but freshman running back Dylan Jones might, be a bit of a spark plug for Wisconsin, as he has 52 carries to lead the team, 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 4.2 yards per carry. That also, leads the team among actual, running backs who have gotten more than 10 carries. And so expect Dylan Jones, the freshman running back, to probably get a majority of those carries for Wisconsin. And they'll rotate in Darian Dupree as well, who has 41 carries for 159 yards, with 3.9 yards per carry for Darian Dupree. But I expect Dylan Jones to kind of be the guy getting a majority of the carries for Wisconsin in this game. And he's a decent running back. He's a freshman. He's got a lot of, energy, and has really brought a spark to this Wisconsin rushing game that was really bad for the first couple of weeks. And so we'll see. Iowa needs to be ready for Dylan Jones and Darian Dupree on the ground. But I trust the Iowa defense. I really do. I think that, that game against Indiana, a much better offense than Wisconsin. I mean, and they shut it down. And I think they're going to be able to force a few more turnovers against Wisconsin, and they're, whoever's starting at quarterback in that game for the Badgers. And I trust Iowa's defense to do the job. I really do. Maybe I'm too confident heading onto the road in a rivalry game, but I trust Iowa's defense in this game. Aaron says Iowa is in a better place than Wisconsin as a program at the current moment. I'm anticipating an Iowa victory. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think, the cautionary tale for Iowa fans when it comes to, the people who want to fire Kirk Ferentz is, look at Wisconsin. They were, for years, a quality Big Ten team, winning 8, 9, even double-digit games most seasons, making some Big Ten championship games, not winning anything big, not making the college football playoffs, but they were a consistent program and a respectable program. And then they moved on from Paul Chryst, and things have just become an absolute disaster over there, even with, a head coach that a lot of people liked in Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. And things have just been absolutely awful for Wisconsin after that change. And there was a spot where they might fire Luke Fickell here pretty soon and, be on to another coach and another program change and see more transfers. And so I think Wisconsin is a really good cautionary tale for Iowa fans. It's that, you can be upset with Kirk Ferentz. You can expect and want more. In the same way, but be careful what you wish for sometimes, because you see what can happen to a program that moves on from a coach that was consistent. And if things don't go well, they really don't go well. And Wisconsin is a complete mess at the moment. And honestly, if Iowa goes on the road and wins by a few scores, it would not shock me if Luke Fickell was fired the next morning. It really would not. If Wisconsin looks as lifeless as they did against Michigan last weekend, I think that I think he's fired on Sunday. And so maybe there's some motivation from the players to play for Luke Fickell, but they didn't look like they wanted to do that at all against Michigan. They looked like they wanted, him fired almost. And I know that that's not the case for the players, but it was a bad look for Wisconsin against Michigan. And I just think for Iowa, man, just got to strike first. Got to strike first. This is a Wisconsin team that's looking for a reason to, quit. They're looking for Iowa to throw the first punch, for Iowa to go up 10-0, 14-0, just be like, oh, well, it's been that kind of season, that's just how it goes. It's just how the cookie crumbles. And so that the last thing that Iowa wants to do is just let Wisconsin in the game, let Wisconsin build some confidence, build some momentum early on, and then be like, well, we're here in the game. Might as well go win it. This is a team that looks like it quit on its head coach last weekend. And Iowa's got to make sure that they, keep the foot on the pedal this weekend as they take the trip up to Madison. We're going to break down the Wisconsin defense and what the Iowa offense needs to do to have some success right after this.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
And thank you to Mark Rogers for that message. You're watching Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Make sure that you're following me on X at Zach_Heine. Follow my written work at Hawkeyes Wire. And, of course, make sure you're following the Voice of College Football at the VOCFB. All of those social media links are scrolling at the bottom of your screen if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on Spotify, go back and rewind to what I just said and make sure that you're following all of those social media links. This is Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. And I'm here every Monday and Thursday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time talking about Iowa football. We're through the bye week, so we've got a lot coming up here. Iowa on the road at Wisconsin this weekend, and then they're home against Penn State in a big game. And then in a few weeks, they'll be taking on Oregon. So, a lot going on, lots of big games for the Hawkeyes, lots of news. So make sure that you're tuning in every Monday and Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for Iowa Primetime Live. Let's go back to this Wisconsin team. Take a look at the Wisconsin defense, a unit that has traditionally prided itself on being very strong. And despite some turnover, despite some, an offense that is just abysmal, their defense has been pretty good. We mentioned earlier on averaging or allowing just under 20 points per game, which is 40th out of 136 FBS programs. And so not bad at all. We have all of our defensive stats up here. And for Wisconsin, it starts with those two linebackers you see right at the top of your screen there. Christian Allegro with 30 total tackles leads the team. 4 TFLs leads the team. And 2 sacks tied for the team lead. And Christian Allegro he's been good this year. He's been really good for that Wisconsin defense, anchoring that unit in the middle alongside Mason Reiger, who has 15 tackles, 3 TFLs, and 2 sacks. So those guys are really where it starts for Wisconsin's defense, in the middle with those linebackers. And then their safety as well, Preston Zachman, with 12 tackles, but he has 2 picks on the season. Both of them were in the season opener for Wisconsin with those 2 picks. And so, hasn't picked off a ball since. Wisconsin, only has 1 other interception on the season from Emilio Agard. Only 3 picks for that Wisconsin defense this year, and only 1 forced fumble as well, which came from Austin Brown, the safety. So only 4 turnovers in 5 games from this Wisconsin defense sounds a lot like the Iowa defense, who has not forced a lot of turnovers, but has been still a pretty good unit. And so, the key for Iowa, taking care of the ball. This is not a Wisconsin defense that is elite at forcing turnovers. They're not going to force you into too many mistakes. And so, if you're Iowa, I'm just going to make sure that you hold on to the ball, especially if one of those backup quarterbacks like Hank Brown or Jeremy Heklinski is in the game. Can't make mistakes, can't turn the ball over to Wisconsin. They also don't get after the passer very much. I mean, they have 11 sacks this year, which is pretty good in 5 games. It's just over 2 sacks a game. But it's Allegro with 2, Reiger with 2, and then a bunch of guys that have 1. Tackett Curtis, another linebacker, which has 24 total tackles and a sack. So, again, that linebacker group is pretty good for Wisconsin. And then, Brandon Lane Jr. has a sack. Sebastian Cheeks, the linebacker, has a sack. But, not a whole lot of production sack-wise from one guy. It's been a lot of different guys chipping in. But if you ask me, Zach, what are you most concerned about with the Wisconsin defense? It's that linebacker group, Allegro and Curtis and Reiger and Cheeks. Are all guys that are have had good seasons. Even Darrell Peterson with 3 TFLs and a sack this year out of that linebacker room. Tyrese Fearbry. Lots of linebackers. Wisconsin seems to be pretty deep at that linebacker room this year, and so I always got to make sure that those guys don't wreck the game for their offense. But the defensive line for Wisconsin has not been great. I mean, look at it. You have to go all the way down here to Parker Peterson, the first defensive lineman to appear here on the tackles list. He has 7 total tackles, and he's our leading tackler on the defensive line. 1 TFL, no sacks. Brandon Lane Jr., 5 tackles, 1 TFL, 1 sack. Ben Barton, 4 tackles, no sacks, no TFLs. JVR Suggs, 1 tackle, 1 TFL, 1 sack. I mean, they're not getting a whole lot of production from that D line. And if you're an Iowa fan, you're licking your chops because you have one of the best offensive lines in all of college football, and they're going up against a unit that hasn't done a whole lot of this year with that Wisconsin defensive line. And so I think Iowa's got a big advantage right there. And again, that's why run the ball. Kamari Moulton, Xavier Williams, Nathan McNeil, that offensive line, that needs to be Iowa's game plan this week. Run the football down their throats. Because I don't care who the quarterback is, whether it's Mark Gronowski or Hank Brown or Jeremy Heklinski. Iowa's identity is to run the ball. And they have an opportunity against a not very good Wisconsin defensive line with a great offensive line for Iowa to run the ball. So I'm hoping and praying that they do that this weekend. So I think if they do, if they run the ball to the ability that we've seen them do it for most of the year, they're going to win this game. If they don't, if they get too cute, if they get too fancy, if they start throwing the ball over the yard, they throw some turnovers, or they throw some picks, they throw the ball away, things could get dicey. And so I'm hoping that Iowa, goes back to the ground game. Yes, I want to see an explosive offense through the air eventually, but I just don't think that this is the game in this moment on the road. Quarterback question marks, no Reese Vanderzee. I just don't think that this is the game for that, especially with looking at what Wisconsin has on defense and what you have on your offensive line. This has got to be one of those vintage Iowa 200, 250 yards on the ground type of game where they just wear down Wisconsin. Wear them down. That's got to be what this is for Iowa. And if they do that, I think you feel pretty good about Iowa's chances of going into Madison and winning the Heartland Trophy, bringing it back home where it belongs, to Iowa City. I will get more into this game and give my official prediction on Thursday night's show. But in the last about 10 minutes or so that I'm going to be on tonight, I want to talk about some of the rest of the Big Ten action from this past weekend. Because boy, oh boy, there were some interesting results in the Big Ten Conference this past weekend. And I have to start here. It's the one that everyone's talking about. What the heck happened to Penn State this weekend? Losing to UCLA 42-37 on the road. I don't think people realize how bad UCLA is. They were 0-4 entering that game. They had just fired their head coach in Deshaun Foster. I mean, they had an offensive play caller who just found out he was calling the plays earlier that week, and they go hang 42 on Penn State. Nico Iamaleava looking like the quarterback that he was paid to be. 5 total touchdowns, 150 yards rushing for him, and three scores on the ground. Wow, yikes, Penn State. I mean, they're 3-2 now. They lose to Oregon at home. It sucks. It's not great for the James Franklin can't win big games narrative, but it's you can see it. Oregon's very good. Like, you can understand why you lost that game. There's no excuse for losing to UCLA. I don't care that you have to fly across country and play them over in Los Angeles. I don't care. This is a UCLA team that's terrible, and they still are. I don't care that they won this game. They're a bad football team, and Penn State lost and got embarrassed. And it wasn't fluky either. It wasn't like there was a tight, low-scoring game and UCLA got a weird bounce and recovered a fumble and won the game 13-10. It's like, well, if things just bounced our way, we would have no. UCLA just from the jump dominated Penn State. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. James Franklin is in a world of trouble right now. He is in a world of trouble. They're not making the playoffs. They're 3-2 right now. They'd have to win out to be 10-2 to make the playoffs. And they have to play at Iowa. They have to play Ohio State at home and then at Indiana, I believe. They're not winning out. Just not going to happen. So you're going to miss the college football playoff in a year that everyone had to making the playoff, winning the Big Ten. And now you're unranked and you're going to miss the playoff. I mean, James Franklin is in deep trouble right now. He's in really deep trouble. And we all know, how much that Drew Aller has, struggled this season. It wasn't really his fault on Saturday. His defense gave up 42 points. He scored 35 points. He didn't turn the ball over. Like, Drew Aller did not play terrible. His defense did. His defense looked uninterested in playing that game. And again, if you're an Iowa fan, you are licking your chops to get that defense in town next weekend. At home, Kinnick Stadium, under the lights, night game on Peacock, unfortunately. But a night game against that defense. Oh, Mark Gronowski back, Reese Van Der Zee back, Jazz Patterson back potentially. Oh, that game looking a lot more winnable now than it did 2 weeks ago. Not sure if it's going to be a ranked Penn State team. Probably not. They're playing Northwestern this week, so even if they beat Northwestern, I don't think it'll be enough to get them ranked again. So unfortunately, it might not be a game for Iowa to break that losing streak against ranked opponents. But still a big game nonetheless. And yikes, Penn State just looked abysmal, absolutely abysmal. And yeah, Iowa gets them next weekend, and I think it's going to be a really interesting game. Iowa can win that game. Iowa can definitely win that game, I think, after seeing what Penn State has done the last 2 weeks. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Elsewhere around the Big Ten Conference, I'm going to get rid of this college football reference page for now. But elsewhere around the Big Ten Conference, Ohio State taking care of business 42-3 over Minnesota. They fell behind 3-0. Excuse me, early on, but they took care of business from there and won that game 42-3. It's a good win for Ohio State. They're the best team in the country, in my opinion, and they proved it was. And Minnesota could not row the boat to a victory. PJ Fleck losing big games. I'm not surprised one bit at that, but We go elsewhere around the conference. Obviously, I talked about Wisconsin losing to Michigan 24-10 earlier. Illinois beating Purdue 43-27. The offense looking fantastic for Illinois. Luke Altmaier is really good. 290 passing yards, a career high for him in that win. But Illinois' defense has been terrible these last 3 games. I mean, they just gave up 450 yards and 27 points to a not good Purdue offense after giving up big yards to USC and Indiana. I would be very worried about that unit if I'm Brett Bielema right now. He needs to get that unit figured out soon because your offense is figuring things out, but the defense is not good enough right now. Northwestern beats Louisiana Monroe 42-7. Who cares? Nebraska beats Michigan State 38-27. Good win for the Cornhuskers. Good win for the Cornhuskers right there. Emmett Johnson, 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. A solid home win for Nebraska. I'll give them credit. A good home win. Not a good Michigan State team by any bit of the imagination, but a solid win for Nebraska. Pat yourselves on the back. I celebrate that win, please. Michigan State, wow, yikes. Aiden Childs was terrible. 2 picks, 83 passing yards in that game. I mean, Michigan State will only go as far as Aiden Childs takes them. And he did not take them very far last Saturday in that game. And yikes, not looking good for Michigan State right now. And then how about Washington coming back to beat Maryland 24-20? They trailed 20-0 late third quarter, but a big rally for Washington. Damon Williams is really good. Really good. That Washington defense really locked in after a slow start. Nice road win for Washington, going cross country, literally across the country, Washington to Maryland to win that game. Big win for them and for Jedd Fisch. Maryland, really a tough loss. You had 5-0 in your hands, in the palm of your hand. You had the 5-0 start and you blew it. You let a 20-point lead slip out of your fingers, and now you're 4-1, and just feels like a big missed opportunity for Mike Loxley's squad. And for the first time all year, Malik Washington played like a freshman at quarterback. Not his best game. Still going to be a stud. I fully believe that, but a tough game for Malik Washington, in that loss to Washington. And Maryland will look to regroup here as they host Nebraska next weekend. Low-key good game in the Big Ten next year or next week. Nebraska at Maryland. Keep an eye on that as you're watching Iowa versus Wisconsin, which will take off at 6 p.m., a night game in Madison next weekend, with some other fun games on the slate as well. Ohio State at Illinois should be a good time. Rutgers at Washington on Friday night. Not a bad game there. Nebraska, Maryland, I mentioned earlier. Indiana at Oregon at 2:30. Really fun game right there. So the Big Ten going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on here down the stretch. So we're just about to the halfway point of the season. That's going to wrap it up for me, though, tonight on Iowa Primetime Live. We are going to be breaking down more Iowa versus Wisconsin on Thursday night. I'll be giving my prediction and my winner of the game then, and previewing the rest of the Big Ten slate as well. But thank you all for tuning in to Iowa Primetime Live, Iowa at the voice of college football. Have a great night, everybody. I will talk to you on Thursday. And as always, go Hawks.